PlayStation. Sony's first gaming console launched in December 1994 in Japan and September 1995 in North America. It came from an unlikely beginning, a failed partnership with Nintendo that left Sony with CD-ROM technology and no deal. Rather than walk away, Sony built their own machine. The PlayStation used CDs instead of cartridges, which made games cheaper to produce and allowed for larger, more cinematic experiences. It sold over 100 million units and introduced a generation of players to 3D gaming through titles like Metal Gear Solid, Final Fantasy VII, and Resident Evil. PlayStation Net Eurose. A special black version of the original PlayStation released in 1996, the Net Eurose was aimed at developers and enthusiasts who wanted to create their own games. It came with development tools and could connect to a PC, letting users write and run their own software. It was never meant for mass retail and required a membership to obtain. Only a few thousand units were made, which makes it one of the rarest official PlayStation variants ever produced. For its time, it was a genuinely unusual idea, Sony offering consumers a small window into the development side of gaming. PS1. Released in 2000, the PS1 was a redesigned and significantly smaller version of the original PlayStation. Sony trimmed it down to roughly half the size of the original model, giving it a rounder, more compact shape. It came out near the end of the original PlayStation's commercial life, just as the PlayStation 2 was launching, but it kept selling well as a budget option. A small LCD screen could also be attached, turning it into a portable setup. It extended the life of the platform without changing anything about how games played. PlayStation 2. Launched in 2000, the PlayStation 2 became the best-selling home console of all time with over 155 million units sold. It built on everything the original PlayStation established and added DVD playback, which gave it value beyond gaming at a time when DVD players were still expensive. The hardware was powerful enough to handle the leap into more detailed 3D worlds, and its library eventually grew to over 4,000 titles. It had an extraordinarily long commercial life, with Sony continuing to manufacture it until 2013, 13 years after release. PlayStation 2 Slim. Sony released a slimmer version of the PS2 in 2004, making it roughly 2/3 lighter and considerably thinner than the original model. The redesign also added a built-in Ethernet port on all models, which the original had only offered through an expansion bay. It kept the same game library and performance while being easier to fit into an entertainment setup. The slim model helped keep the PS2 relevant well into the PS3 era and contributed meaningfully to those final sales numbers. PlayStation 3. Sony's third home console arrived in 2006 and brought with it Blu-ray disc playback, a then powerful cell processor, and an ambitious but complicated architecture that took developers years to fully understand. The early models were expensive at launch, $599 in the US, which hurt initial sales. Over time, the platform recovered as its exclusive game library strengthened and the price dropped. It also introduced the PlayStation Network as a free online service. The PS3 ultimately sold around 87 million units and is remembered as a slow starter that found its footing through persistence. PlayStation 3 Slim. In 2009, Sony released a slimmer PS3 that was smaller, quieter, and consumed less power than the original. It also came at a reduced price, which helped the console regain competitive momentum against the Xbox 360. The original PS3 had a distinctive curved design that divided opinion, and the Slim replaced it with a more angular, straightforward look. It sold well and helped the PS3 close the gap with its competition in the back half of that console generation. PlayStation 3 Super Slim. A second redesign came in 2012, producing an even smaller and lighter unit than the Slim model. The most notable change was the replacement of the slot-loading disk drive with a sliding door mechanism that sat on top of the unit. Opinions on the design were mixed. Some found it practical, others found it cheap-feeling. Regardless, it was the most affordable PS3 at the time of release and helped Sony continue selling the platform as the generation wound down. PlayStation 4. Launched in 2013, the PS4 was Sony's response to a generation where they had stumbled at the start with the PS3. They prioritized developer friendliness, used familiar PC-like architecture, and launched at a competitive price of $399. The DualShock 4 controller added a touchpad and a share button, making it easy to capture and upload gameplay. The PS4 became one of the fastest-selling consoles in history and went on to sell over 117 million units. A strong exclusive game library, including titles like The Last of Us Part 2, God of War, and Horizon Zero Dawn, defined the platform's identity. PlayStation 4 Slim. Released in 2016, the PS4 Slim was a quieter, smaller, and more energy-efficient version of the original PS4. It didn't add any new features or performance improvements, but it came at a lower price and became the standard PS4 model going forward. The original large model was phased out after the Slim's release. PlayStation 4 Pro. Also released in 2016, the PS4 Pro was a more powerful version of the PS4 aimed at players with 4K televisions. It could output games at higher resolutions, supported HDR, and ran existing titles with improved frame rates or visual quality through patches. It wasn't a new generation, all PS4 games worked on all PS4 models, but it gave Sony a way to offer a premium tier within the same generation. It was a direct response to Microsoft's similar mid-generation upgrade strategy and became popular with players who wanted the best performance the PS4 could offer. PlayStation 5. Sony's fifth home console launched in November 2020 and introduced the most significant controller evolution in the PlayStation line's history. The DualSense featured haptic feedback and adaptive triggers that physically responded to in-game actions. Pulling a bowstring or driving on different surfaces produced tangible resistance and sensation. The console itself used a custom SSD that dramatically reduced load times, often eliminating them entirely. It launched in two versions simultaneously, a standard disc model and a digital-only version without a disc drive. The PS5 has sold over 60 million units and represents Sony's current flagship platform. PlayStation 5 Slim. Sony released a revised PS5 in 2023 that was smaller and lighter than the original, while maintaining the same performance. The standard model also came with a detachable disc drive. It streamlined the lineup and made the console easier to fit into a typical entertainment setup. The original PS5 had been notably large, one of the biggest consoles ever made, so the size reduction was welcomed by many. PlayStation 5 Pro. Released in 2024, the PS5 Pro was a higher performance variant of the PS5, following the same mid-generation upgrade approach Sony had taken with the PS4 Pro. It featured a more powerful GPU, improved ray tracing capabilities, and upscaling technology developed by Sony called PlayStation Spectral Super Resolution. It launched without a disk drive by default, though the detachable drive from the Slim model was compatible. It was priced at a premium and aimed at players who wanted the highest visual quality available on PlayStation hardware before the next generation arrives.